Humanities Art, Part 3, Jim Henson. Jim Henson is a puppet master. Jim Henson was an American puppeteer, animator, cartoonist, actor, inventor, filmmaker, and screenwriter who achieved worldwide notice as the creator of The Muppets and Fraggle Rock, and as of the director of The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. Henson was born in Greenville, Mississippi on September 24, 1936. The younger of two children, Paul Ransom Henson, an agronomist for the United States Department of Agriculture, and his wife, Betty Marcella. He was raised as a Christian Scientist, spending his early childhood in Leland, Mississippi, before moving with his family to University Park, Maryland, near Washington, D.C. in the late 1940s. Gaining influence by radio ventriloquist Edgar Bergen and early television puppets such as Bart Tillstrom on Kukla, Fran and Ollie, as well as Bill and Cora Baird. In 1975, he informed that he was no longer a practicing member of Christian Science. Henson began working for WTOP-TV, now WSA, in 1954 while attending Northwestern High School, creating puppets for a Saturday morning children's show called The Junior Morning Show. He enrolled at the University of Maryland College Park as a studio arts major, thinking he could become a commercial artist. He learned his craft and textiles through his puppetry class offered in the Applied Arts Department courses in college, graduating in 1960 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Home Economics. As a freshman, he created Sam and Friends, a 5-minute puppet show for WRC-TV. The puppets would become forerunners of The Muppets, which also included his most famous character, Kermit the Frog, who remained on the WRC-TV in 1954 through 1961. During his time on the show, he experimented with techniques that changed the way in which puppetry was used on television, using frame defined by camera shots, allowing the puppet performer to be off camera. He said, "Puppets need to have life and sensitivity." Using flexible, fabric-covered foam rubber, he made characters to express a wide variety of expressions of emotions, while at the time, puppets were made out of carved wood. Using rods to move his Muppets' arms instead of the usual strings allowed greater movement and control of expressions. He said, "I wanted the Muppet characters to speak, so I made random mouthpieces for mouth movements to be precise with the dialogue they spoke." The show was a financial success. Having doubts about continuing, he met Jane Niebel, who assisted him on the show, then spent several months in Europe dating Jane and rethinking his career. The next 2 decades he spent in commercials, talk shows, and children's projects until one day he realized his dream, Muppets being an entertainment for everybody. In 1950, Sam and Friends led to a series of guest appearances on network talk and variety shows, appearing on The Steve Allen Show, The Jack Paar Program, and The Ed Sullivan Show. These television broadcasts greatly increased his exposure of his puppets, which then led to the formula of special guests interacting with characters and celebrities throughout the 60s, a continuing trend that exists today. His popular Henson's commercials was a series of coffee ads in which the Muppets would get away with greater level of slapstick violence that might not have been acceptable to human actors. The puppet stunts were added. These commercials added new characters that would later be involved in The Muppet Show. Henson produced 300 coffee ads, but in July 1992, Brady was sued by Jim Henson Productions for using copyright and trademark infringement, because Brady, the marketing executive, was using Henson's name and likeness incorrectly, trying to license his characters. In 1963, Henson and his wife moved to New York City, forming the company Muppets Inc. Frank Oz, in 1963, became Henson's puppet performer, in which their friendship and collaborated teamwork created portrayals of Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street, Kermit and Miss Piggy, as well as Fozzie Bear. Ralph, a piano-playing dog, was the first Muppet to appear on live TV, and regular appearances on The Jimmy Dean Show. In 1969, television producer Joanne Gaines Cooney, impressed with Jim Henson's work, hired him for full-time on Sesame Street, a children's program for public educational television, on November 10, 1969. They worked on popular characters Grover, Bert and Ernie, Cookie Monster, Oscar the Grouch, and Big Bird. Henson himself performed puppets Guy Smiley, a game show host, and Kermit, who was a television news reporter. The show was split in half, showing humans and puppets in a learning method of that day's teaching. He produced shows during season 1 and 2 of Sesame Street. Spreading his audience more, he then wanted to do a Broadway show that involved the Muppets. Lou Grade financed a possible season, and the Muppet Show was born. This included Gonzo the Great and Animal. Jim Henson wanted to host the show, but seeing as Kermit being his alter ego, decided Kermit would host the show instead. Having him be the stressed out comic relief who tries to make the best show despite the various Muppets who have their own personalities and ideas. The theatrical debut film of the Muppets, called The Muppet Movie, earned $65.2 million domestically and was the 61st highest grossing film at the time. Kermit sang the song The Rainbow Connection, and it hit number 25 on the Billboard Hot 100, being nominated for an Academy Award for Best Song. In 1981, it followed with The Great Muppet Caper. Jim ended The Muppet Show to then pursue films. In 1982, Henson founded Jim Henson Foundation to promote and develop the art of puppetry. He helped aid makeup artist Stuart Freeborn in creating the articulation of Yoda. Oz won a nomination for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, having done work with George Lucas on 5 Star Wars films. He co-directed The Dark Crystal in 1982 with Frank Oz, wanting to create a fantasy for children that was real and felt alive to exist in the real world. The Dark Crystal was based on conceptual artwork by Brian Fraud, and it was a financial and critical success. Dark, twisted, and full of beautiful world of wonder, magic, and amazing creatures, this children's film was a masterpiece, and still till this day has built the film industry on puppets and special effects. Oz directed The Muppets Take Manhattan in 1984, which grossed about $255 million domestically and ranked one of the top 40 films in 1984. In 1986, Jim Henson directed by himself a fantasy film called Labyrinth, but sadly it was a commercial disappointment, despite the New York Times calling it a fabulous film. This demoralized Henson. His son Brian Henson described, "The closest I've seen him to turning in on himself and getting quite depressed. This was his dream film, and it failed." The film would later become a cult classic, gaining massive worldwide attention for music, movies, art, puppetry, filmmaking, special effects. The film would sell out till this day, showing that Jim's masterpiece was indeed a masterpiece. Henson continued to work on television with Fraggle Rock and the animated Muppets Babies. Then also a darker, more mature themed show of folktale and mythology called The Storyteller, which won an Emmy for Outstanding Children's Program. The Jim Henson Hour, which mixed lighthearted Muppets with risky material, won him another Emmy for Outstanding Directing in a Variety or Music Program, but it was canceled after 13 episodes due to low ratings. Henson blamed NBC's constant rescheduling for its cancellation. In 1989, Henson sold his company to the Walt Disney Company for almost $150 million, hoping he would be able to spend a lot more time with his family and be more creative, while Disney handled business matters. In 1990, he completed the Muppets at Walt Disney World and the Walt Disney World attraction Muppet Vision 3D. In 1986, Henson and his wife separated. Although they remained close for the rest of his life and had 5 children together, Lisa, Cheryl, Brian, John, and Heather. In May 4, 1990, on the Arsenio Hall Show, appearing with Kermit, he disclosed that he was tired and had a sore throat. This would be his final appearance on television. He traveled to Ossoki, North Carolina with his daughter, Cheryl, to visit his father and stepmother. Henson canceled a Muppet recording, which was odd. On May 14th, his estranged wife came to visit that night. Henson had trouble breathing at around 2 a.m. on May 15th and began to cough blood. He stopped breathing. An X-ray revealed he had a bacterial infection. Henson died at the age of 53, May 16, 1990, at New York Hospital. His death was of toxic shock syndrome. The Jim Henson Company and the Henson Company continued after his death. Movies such as Mirror Mask, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, television shows like Farscape, Bear in the Big Blue House, all by the Jim Henson's Creature Shop, as well as other films such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, Secret of the Ooze, and Turtles in Time. His Creature Shop is still being used today. Jim Henson's latest project is 2019's The Dark Crystal, The Age of Resistance on Netflix. Jim Henson's puppetry wizardry was fantastic and still is, showing the world that being good at something can be used to showcase it in the world. His genius of puppetry created a new way of creating grand films, grand characters, and a grand idea to showcase the world and express it. That's why Jim Henson is part of Humanities art. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Jim Henson. To me personally, Jim Henson is a genius. Him able to use puppetry to create shows and films and really relate to people and connect with people in media and in a larger format, and I think that's just impressive, and they still use it till this day. I mean, it's amazing that he created a legacy and it's still being used today. I mean, I saw The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance on Netflix, and it's an amazing film, amazing work of magic and wonder, and you watch that show on Netflix. It's 10 episodes, and then you watch The Dark Crystal film. It's on Netflix too, and you put it side by side. It's a really good, fantastical lore film that you won't find anywhere else but Jim Henson's company. Like, they made a fantastic world and a fantastic story. Really cool. And films such as like Labyrinth, that's just dear to my heart. I can watch Labyrinth again and again. The film with David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly. The music was great. The storytelling was great. Just the characters are amazing. Everything's spectacular in that. And yeah, it just proves that films can be done in puppetry. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I can talk about, but Jim Henson is an incredible visionist when it comes to puppetry. And Kermit the Frog will forever be remembered, and still is being remembered as an iconic, almost close and related almost iconically to Mickey Mouse and Walt Disney. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. That's it, part 3 of Humanities Art, Jim Henson. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with part 4 of Humanities Art. You guys are in for a special treat. Thank you. Without further ado, and goodbye.